starts eliminating what you think makes no sense, and chances are that you will end with something which makes sense. So the methodology is an interesting way by which Italians are thinking. I mentioned today in the other room that thinking is, in my opinion, more important than knowing. I remember students who are asked to design a chair and they said, well, I'm only first year, I never designed a chair before. I don't know how to make a chair. So my answer was always, I'm not interested in you knowing to make a chair. I'm interested in how you think a chair should be. And this is visual thinking. You use different colors, you take care of a detail. Next one. I have to hurry, you see. Now, visual thinking for the problem of reducing the size of the typewriter, also by Mizzoli. Next one, please. Which led to this masterpiece, which is in the permanent collection of the Museum of Modern Art, the Lettera 22, the portable typewriter. It was the smallest. It was absolutely a media hit when it came out. It was flat and small. Next one, please. No, there's a slide missing. Perhaps, yeah. I'm sorry. Okay, let's go ahead. It was finished later 22, but then Sozzas took over from Mizzoli and designed this typewriter, which was one piece with a case. You see, this was sliding out, and there was a rubber hinge here. And the interesting story is that Sozzas was asked, what color shall we use? And he said, one color only, we'll make it red. And it was the biggest disaster on the American market, because we always think of blood, and it couldn't sell here. So this is an important thing to keep in mind when you make your decision. Instead of guessing wrong, try some market research. Talk. Next one, please. This was a showroom on Park Avenue designed by a group of Italian architects, B.B. Pierre, Belgiojoso, Peresuti, and Rogers. It was a very beautiful showroom, a small showroom, in which those pieces of marble carved in this shape were all supporting the equipment and typewriters and calculating machines, and people could come and type and try them. It was very successful. The lighting is done with some Venini glass from Murano, and it was a jewel, like a jewel store. Those pieces of equipment were displayed like very precious things. It was a time when calculating machines, computers, all this equipment was a luxury. This photograph was in 1950. Next one, please. Now, the next star in the Olivetti group was Mario Bellini. Mario Bellini was trained as an architect, but he felt like architecture is industrial design, because it's not built anymore, because it's assembled. And he was concerned with that issue I mentioned to you before. How does a product looks when it's not used? How would you like to have your big calculators? These were the first computers. And he used to make a lot of experiments with stretched material to give the sculptural quality. Next one, please. Here you see how he used to take wood, stretch material, get different arrangements. And Bellini's method is very different and sometimes very criticized. He said, I have my team of people, I design my products the way Fellini designs his films, his movies. We don't draw, we talk. We talk around the table, we talk. And as we talk, we have two people who go to the shop, and every time we talk, they go to the shop and bring us what we talk about. It's made out of foam. And then we change it, and then they go back to the shop, and we continue to talk, and this lasts for weeks, and then we're ready. Next one, please. Now, these are first computers designed in 1960s. They could fit very well in the new Museum of San Francisco. Next one. This is a detail. Next one. And this is another calculating machine by Bellini. It was before machines were having chips. It was when machines were big and heavy and used to take the same space a typewriter used to take. Next one, please. But as you see, the photography emphasizes here the details, the nature of the corners of the keyboards, the use of color, very restrained, a lot of gray, but when you have a lot of gray, each touch of color has a different value. Next one, please. The curve, the radius of the angle, another detail of the same calculating machine, and then the masterwork of Bellini, who is very outdated today, I'm sorry to say. Next one. But before I show that, still speaking about the method of Bellini, he used to, as I said, talk, and his people in the shop used to make these foam components and bring them, color key them, and arrange them in different ways. Next one, please. Next one, please. You see, all this is foam with sandpaper, keyboard. Next one. Then the big discovery came that it's better to have the keyboard horizontally, and you will see in a moment why. Next one. Because you don't cover it with your hand. So they discarded the vertical arrangement and choose the horizontal, so that your hand is not covering what's typed on the paper. You see the rotating hand. There, you cannot see it here, while there is no problem. Next one, please. You'll see in a moment. Now, this is the Divi Summa, the Olivetti 18, which was a masterwork, but it's totally outdated, as I told you, because of the size. But the big invention was then, Bellini was concerned to avoid dust coming into the keyboard. Therefore, he decided to cover the keyboard with a rubber membrane, like skin. And he, next one, please. You see, if you operate, in Italy people don't expect you to be left-handed. So the production is all right hand. But if you use your right hand here, you can see what's coming out there without any obstacle. Next one, please. 1968, something like this. I will be specific at the end. I have the catalog of the exhibition. No, but this is a time. But you see the size. Now, this was such a big thing that Bellini also said, well, I want people to enjoy it when they don't use it. Next one, please. And when they don't use it, they may like to keep it vertical. And also, some people made some innuendos that he tries to bring some erotic quality, and he never rejected it. On the contrary. Next one, please. He felt that there is an erotic quality in the keyboard. Next one, which is obvious. Next one. Now this was next Divi Summa, the 22, a larger one, based on more or less the same principles but a different form, which was again interesting as an object, and nobody else has done it. And it was too late to repeat it because it's outdated. It's too large. The technology has changed. Next one, please. But I think it's an important moment in the morphology of a product. Next one, please. Now, I want to make a couple of more remarks on Bellini. Bellini is a Ricardo. I don't know. Is Ricardo still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, Ricardo mentioned today about building bridges, and I think that the most important thing is to build invisible bridges between people. But Bellini is building bridges with a history. He's very much interested to find roots, though he doesn't believe that he should repeat the shapes. He feels like he should repeat the concept. And this is a very successful but expensive chair, totally unaffordable, done in real leather over a metal skeleton, which is inspired by a very old traditional Italian chair. Next one, please. Next one, please. And very different from what he suggests for cars. He suggests that cars should be living rooms for those who don't drive. Only the driver needs more ergonomic space, but the passenger should have more freedom if it's like everybody is very much confined in today's cars. And therefore, this was his proposal for a car which unfortunately was never built. Next one, please. This is a soft, probably. Yeah.
Is
Il fiasco.
Is that the Italian reaction to the 50 backseat?
What I want to emphasize
Nathan,
with these slides.
I want to ask you: is that the Italian solution to the back seat of the '57 Chevy?
Could be. But what I want to say is this constant search of independent thinking, this constant search of question authority, this constant experiment of why not. And I want in this line to explain to you that having a small market and a small industry, Italy could afford this type of experiments. We cannot afford these sort of things because the financial disaster is enormous because of the size of the market. But in Italy, well, you make a mistake, it's an experimental mistake, it's not a fundamental mistake, and you go to the next one, please.
Professor Shapira.
Yeah.
If I could ask you, who was actually buying a lot of these Italian designs? Because I can only state from my own experience, and I haven't been to Italy, but I was in Paris, and I know they have some very extravagant design in Paris as well, but I very rarely ever saw any of that work in the average person's home. Who was actually sustaining these types of products in Italy?
Well, for instance, this is a chair designed by Sopino.
Donato Durbino.
Durbino, this is it. Yes, you're absolutely right. And I bought these chairs myself. As a matter of fact, I used them in Africa because when I went for 3 years in Africa, I took them there under my seat in the airplane.
It's good for the flight.
And we had our living room full.
But my question, Professor Shapira, in terms of some of the products that they made, because obviously, as you mentioned with the Bellini chair that was unaffordable, how much, what type of production were we talking about for many of these products? Were they seen as being limited with a limited market, and they were able to sustain themselves with that market, or what? Because if I can just finish.
No, I would like to delay an answer, not because I want to be evasive, but I have a videotape which will answer to your question. As a matter of fact, Herman Miller is one of the buyers. I'm showing how the chair is manufactured in Italy in the next videotape. But
for the benefit of those who can't see it, because there's some people here who won't see that video.
Yeah, this is why I will try to answer. There's no question that there are products which are affordable and well designed in Italy, and very frequently the affordable non-designed products, and this is how I will end my lecture, are showing incredible innovative qualities. And the thing which I enjoyed most in Italy is to go in a 5 and 10 store just to look, not to buy, because there are always exciting things there which interest me. But there is also a luxury market like what you saw in this chair, which is always looking for customers overseas, I must say. A lot of them are sold in the United States and in Brazil. So the luxury market is a topic which I'd like to address in the discussions, which is a result of shifts in our society, which, in my opinion, were not predictable. Next one, please. Now, when I say this irreverential attitude of exploration, adventure, and uniqueness, I want to illustrate this with a few examples. Here are some of those chairs. Next one, please. And this is affordable. Next one, please. This is a piece of furniture where a mirror and fur is used. It's a cupboard with drawers. It's when we were talking about the form of objects when they are not used. Next one, please. This is jewelry designed by Ettore Sozzas. Also very unusual and affordable. Rings. And probably the same way as the French are proud that it's a country with 1,000 cheeses, Italy could be proud to be a country with 1,000 shapes of bread. And I used to collect breads from Italy, and then there were ants that I had to throw my collection away. But it's amazing how many shapes of bread, especially if you travel throughout Italy. Don't try to collect the bread in one place, but go from one city to another and collect bread. It's amazing, the diversity of shapes. And this is what I mean, the unknown designer, the anonymous designer, the popular designer, perhaps. Next one, please. It takes a lot of guts to use old buildings or storage spaces to organize contemporary exhibitions. The contrast is superb. This is in an old storage space of Venice. Next one, please. Or to display contemporary sculpture on a balcony of medieval palace. So perhaps we should call this type of design the why not design. Why not? Next one. I had once a student in my introductory class who came at the end and said, "I'm sorry to tell you that I haven't registered your class because I need your advice. I just took a degree in law. Do you think that I have any future to become a designer?" And I felt challenged by the question. I said, after all, I think that design is a form of delinquency. because you try to avoid following the law. You do not copy things which you have done. You try to change them. But it's a positive delinquency because you do not follow the law, but you improve it. You improve it because you feel that you have a solution which nobody has thought before. Since then, I must say that in '88, the Museum of Modern Art has made for the first time a retrospective exhibition for this non-American designer who is still alive. Charlie Eames had an exhibition, but nobody outside the United States. Bellini was the first one to get this exhibition. He is very withdrawn, but when he is with people and gets a little bit loose, he becomes a stereotype Italian, and my students shot these photographs because he wanted to show me that, look, I got something you can show to people, that Bellini is a stereotype Italian, and you will see the next 4 photographs. I feel somehow jealous about myself. This is 20 years ago, and there is some change taking place, and I always say that how good it would be to stay where you are forever, but you never stay where you are forever. Remember that you stay where you are only for a moment. Next one, please. Next one. Next one. Next one. And this is another Italian designer, Carlo Cattaneo. This is Ben Gurule. Ben Gurule, they both had an exhibition in Los Angeles. But I want to try and stick to the title of my presentation, which is Fantasy Becomes Reality, and to illustrate this, I will show you some work of Carlo Cattaneo, who in the tradition of his people understands material, and the material he understands wonderfully is paper. Next one. So he designed the frog out of paper. Next one. Next one. Next one. The eyes. Next one. And this is the frog. These are the eyes. He designed, next one please, crocodile. But you see, it's his fantasy. He plays actually, but he does those objects. Next one. Takes a piece of paper, cuts it, folds it. Next one. Next one. Puts it together without using glue. Next one. And here's a crocodile. Next one. It's a fierce one. Okay, so this is a fantasy. Next one. And then he invents this triandalo, which is really nothing you can recognize. And he calls it, he invents a world also. Next one. This is a modular unit. Next one. Which can open, which has those cuts. And he made many of them, many in different colors. Next one. This was the obsession. Next one. And this is how he folds it. And, cut, but dotted is folded. Next one. And then he starts combining, and there is no end to it. Next one. 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 how does this become reality? How does this become in a useful project? He never stops. Next one. Next one. Environmental sculpture. Next one. Playground for children. I wanted to end my presentation here, but then I thought that perhaps I should show you a couple of 3 more slides. Next one. One autumn in Milano, before the beginning of school, the students created a little city to sell their old books. And this is an example of recycling and of understanding materials. Fruit crates covered with polyvinyl. Temporary building. Disaster housing. Next one. Instant city. And please don't take it as an insult, next one. But I never knew where Kentucky is until I came to America. I wanted to remind you where Italy is. And this is Rome, this is Milano, this is Sicily, this is Sardinia, and Venice is here. Thank you very much. There was no interruption, and I'm surprised. Please, repeat it.
Are there any questions for Professor Shapira on?
Yes, please.
Well, it was done for an exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art, which was called the Italian Domestic Landscape. And I'm pretty sure that you have it in your library. It's a very important catalog in which a number of designers were invited to design new things for that exhibition. And Bellini came to see.
Nathan, could you take the speaker, Professor Shapira? Could you take the microphone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The question was when was okay, thank you. Okay, I'll stick it. The question was when was Bellini car designed, and the answer was that it was in the 70s for an exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art, which was called Italian Domestic Landscape. And for this exhibition, a number of prominent designers were invited to contribute with some new ideas. And Bellini suggested this car, hoping that next day Detroit would come to him and order new designs. But it hasn't been. It hasn't left the dream level. You know, the interesting thing now is the office of the future, because the new definition of the office is my office is where I sit, and I foresee that our way of dressing will be changed, because there will be new pockets for new pieces of equipment, so that you could have your fax machine, your telephone, your computer, your everything zipped and unzipped. Somebody I read, I think on the airplane, somebody went on the top of a mountain and used to check the faxes which were in the office and give instructions to the secretary. So be prepared. The future is not what it used to be. nor will it be what it is. The future is not what it used to be, nor will it be what it is.
After 84 or so, when Italian design generated a lot of international noise with Memphis and Alchemia and all those, Italian design became sort of quiet, and I don't know if the lead is, or the inspiration for design is still coming from Italy, or what do you think about it?
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, I think that the third wave of lifestyle may bring all those things which seemed so irrational to us at some time. The virtual reality of Italian design, in my opinion, will have a lot to say in our search for intimate sanctuaries. I have a feeling like the same way the Finns have a sauna in every home. In about 5 years, to preserve our sanity, we will have an intimate sanctuary in our apartments and in our homes to recover from the pressure of the outside life. I can't tell you how relaxed I am in the last 12 hours since I'm here, because nobody reached me on the phone, there was no fax coming in, and I could concentrate on what I had to do. There's no way to have an uninterrupted life when you're close to where your telephone is. And I'm thinking more and more about these side effects. We don't talk enough about it. We don't have we don't have guidelines. What should be the rules? Perhaps there should be hours when there should be no telephones. Yeah, well, I'm screening my messages now, that's true. Yeah. But yeah.
When now the content of a lot of electronic devices is identical, all the little chips and whatever electronic conductors and all, and what is organic design is the visual images, is what appears on the screen, and the shape of the surround or the piece of plastic that houses
The container.
the container stops to be of great importance. I mean, for so many years they are these sort of off-white enclosures, and I think very hard if I can justify decorating in various colors, because it really doesn't matter. You don't. When you look at this object, you look at the changing information, and not at the hardware, not at the box.
Well, it is possible, and I say it is possible, I don't say it's probable, but it is possible that gloves will have in the future a great development, the same way as hard hats had the development in the last 5 years, because we get now hard hats when we go on a bicycle or a motorcycle full of all sorts of accessories and all sorts of gadgets. Well, pretty soon we will have a lot of chips in our gloves, and we will push buttons and have telephones in one finger and radio on another finger. Who knows? So I fully agree with you that perhaps the container becomes totally irrelevant or even misleading. Please.
When we look about the traditional approach to design, which is the material expression, like the furniture and so forth, in the third way, don't you feel that it is losing its importance and it starts to be secondary or a pose or some sort of archival document that is not relevant to life.
This is exactly what I agree with you. I would if I would teach a class now, I would like to assign a project to what should be our interiors for the third wave, because a lot of things make no sense anymore.
Could you elaborate?
The third wave, it's something which we are not prepared, and we are not prepared because we don't talk enough about it.
Could you elaborate on the third wave? Are you referring to Alvin Toffler's third wave?
Yes,
or?
I advise everybody to buy. It's a $5 book if you go to Crown Books. It's called Alvin and Heidi Toffler. They write now together. Changing periods of history. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit too tired after all these slides to be accurate. But everybody knows the book. It's selling very well, and it's very easy to read. And it has been very important for me to see how design should apply to that. Because designers, we design for a world we don't know. We don't design anymore for the same world. It's like what I believe the main difficulty of teaching design is. We have to teach you people to design for a future we don't know. Well, technology has accelerated so fast and so unpredictably that I feel sometimes that reality is ahead of fiction. I never dreamed to have a fax. But now I dream that perhaps next year I could fax cherries. And 3 years later, watermelons. I want to advise you to read something I haven't read yet. And I was hoping to read it, but I couldn't get it. But which seems very interesting. The Museum of Modern Art had recently an exhibition called Mutants Materials. Mutants Materials. And the catalogue of this exhibition was reviewed in New York Times. And the review was excellent. And it was emphasizing exactly that point, that materials become more important than form, especially for people who understand them. And the curator of the exhibition was Paola Antonelli. But I haven't received yet the catalog. I'm waiting for it. I think there would be some interesting.
It's in the museum. It's in the Museum of Modern Art, San Francisco. I saw it there in the bookstore.
Well, then,
so
thank you. I'm planning to go tomorrow there. I'll buy it. Please don't take me as a prophet. I hear you ask this question. Let me tell you something I believe very strongly, and I'm willing to defend my belief. I think that it is much more difficult to give up something we are accustomed than to accept something new. And I think that this is a very interesting question. Look how little home building has changed compared to laptop. Are you aware all this in 10 years we go to these big calculating machines, and suddenly it's something which goes into your pocket. Home building have not changed. Why? Because nobody will give up the idea of a home is a home.
Well, isn't part of the reason why technology is moving so fast is because we are accepting all the crap that's coming out?
I think that we accept credit cards, we accept all the things which we don't understand, we accept all the things with little print, and technology moves very fast. But there are certain things we don't accept. The technology cannot advance. Yeah, I think that you have a good point.
But I think homes have changed. I mean, you look at it, they've moved from single-family homes to large homes, you know, with many bedrooms, depending upon the nature of our society. So in a way, although the structure may essentially be the same to create a feeling of comfort and familiarity, there's a wide range of what the sustenance of it is. Another aspect is adapting what we have. Some homes are being built with built-in TVs. You know, the TVs are built into the walls. A lot of apartments in the same space. People didn't have TVs that long ago. I mean, that's a relatively new phenomenon. I can see computers as being the same sort of thing. You know, buy a home with a built-in computer, monitor or something.
What do you say? It's activated faucet. And the best design was a faucet which were just two holes, a mic and the water.
So if it drips, you can just like shut up.
Oh no, colder or warmer, and stop it. And you know, I'm always laughing because I have a problem on the telephone when I get this message, say operator, and I say operator and nothing happens because I didn't say operator.
I've often heard the comparison.
I'm coming back.
The comparison between the computer and the car.
Yeah.
And the car is basically a dinosaur compared to what the computer has done. And the fact, it's been suggested that the automobile would be a hydrogen-powered car or something that advanced if technology had advanced and taken place as fast as...
Yeah, we have problems with electric car because we don't have yet the battery which we need. And there's a lot of research, and as a matter of fact, we had a conference at UCLA where an engineer from Caltrans told me about a multi-million research which is carried out. They got the funding to introduce in the car a sensor which stops the engine if the driver is drunk. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it stops. But you know, it's. I still believe in my philosophy. Let's design wings and save money.
One topic that I feel I have mixed feelings about, and Ricardo stresses it a lot, the concept of globalism, the concept of removal of borders, removal of nationalistic affiliations or group, or the meaning of the group, and creating one big design concept and big manufacturing.
No, I used to have this fear 10 years ago, and I don't have it anymore because the technology and the computer is allowing us a demassification of production, which means that we can explode hundreds of variants of the same thing. Same way as you can have now computers with 2 million colors. You can, we are going towards a technology where in a situation of large-scale production, individuals will be able to get their preferences considered. So from this point of view, I think that this is why it's important to consider design the anthropology of the material culture of our time, because we will have more and more a capacity to express cultural identities in our consumer habits. And perhaps this is a point where we should talk a little bit about Africa. I think that Africa may avoid the absurdity of our transition from one wave to another wave by going right ahead from crafts to a demassified large-scale production. I don't know if I make myself clear. This is why it's so important to record, analyze, study material cultures, small cultures, large cultures, because finally we will have an opportunity to express them in products. Because I feel that cultural identity is a very healthy concept which promotes mutual respect. Ethnical identity is leading to prejudice, violence, conflict, but cultural identity is a form of enrichment, in my opinion, which will hopefully tolerate diversity and change attitudes which have transformed our century in the most violent century of human history. There is no century in which so many people died than in the 20th century.
The idea of ever-changing production line was manifested in the Cabbage Patch doll, where some of the items on this toy was moved by a randomizing computerized procedure to see that you can get it in any color as long as it's black. This is changing, but the pluralistic and the big variety again is shrinking because of marketing advantages and because of other things, and suddenly bigger selections that were, you know, the number of wristwatches or violins or curtains that were offered in the early 1900s on the Sears catalog, you go today, you find 3 models out of 20 that were in some areas. There is the refinement of the marketing skill says we don't want to carry all these the edges of the bell curve. We just want to handle the middle. And so I'm skeptical. I'm more skeptical than you in recognition that actually there is a trimming back of the variety into a mainstream. That's what we got, and we comply with that. And it's.
Does everybody hear the question? Because there are very interesting comments. Could you hear in the back? Yeah. Okay.
You want to say that question a little louder?
No, this is why I asked if I should repeat the question, but it looks like people heard the comments, and the comments were very profound, in my opinion. Look, I will stick to optimism, and whether I'm successful or not, I don't know. But I have a feeling that the more technology advances, the more opportunities developed for small-scale industries and small business enterprises. And this gives me a lot of hope. I think that we will witness perhaps many designers becoming producers as well. The same happens in cinema, you know. Today you can produce a movie much easier than it was in the past. And this, in my opinion, is the greatest hope for diversity. I certainly agree with you that monotony, globalism, all those things are very detrimental because ultimately they destroy the most precious thing human beings are, which is the humanity of being an individual. But I think, I don't know if I'll be lucky to live enough to see if what my optimism says is true or not. But you'll find out.
Don't you think that the Cabbage Patch example is still as an icon of personalization of industry is important? Don't you think it still represents sort of monolithic production, still produced the same way, in the exact same manner, massively produced?
Massive personalization.
Right, exactly. But still on a massive, but still on that massive scale. I still don't think our production on the whole has reached the level. We're talking of instant customization and high automation that will bring about more cost-effective individual production. I think it's a representation of the change, but I don't think it's really changed yet in that case. That's still massive, but that's still, we're going to produce 800 million of them.
My theory in globalism is that we'll be able to get denim pants in various colors, but they all come from that part of the world which is more efficient,
Cheaper.
cost efficient.
This is possible. This is possible. But my question is
Then
this...
I'm so dependent on the economy, the politics, or the marketing chain that brings it to me. And suddenly they can decide, oh, we had a bad year and you're going to pay twice. And suddenly I am just totally dependent on technologies that are controlled far away and not in my community, and I don't have any reach or control over it. It's just like, so we don't have wheat this year. It didn't work out, and if you want wheat, you pay extra or something. I'm afraid of this total dependency, and even if it is just, let's say that IBM will make computers, that's it. After a while, they will dominate the market, and they will determine what is possible, and they'll also have the power to determine what is not possible.
Who's ever held that kind of monopoly
Yeah.
for a period of time?
5%.
For a period of time.
I have a question over here. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I just
I think it's actually the other way around.
I have a question here.
No, let's hear.
I just wanted to
Speak louder.
I just wanted to take the opportunity to bounce this question off you. I don't know if it's going to be lame or not, but I've talked a lot about arguing with people whether technology is progress, and I don't think it is. And then my brother came up with a good argument, citing Next Generation or Star Trek, as it were, in that they developed food replicators, and well, he's like, well, can't we feed the world based on that technological progress? And I'm wondering what your feeling is on that question, and if technology, the more technological we get, is it necessarily is humanity necessarily more happy as a result?
In listening to both of you, I think that the answer lies in it depends who controls technology.
Well, what if it's the Colecos and the Microsofts?
Well, this may be a problem. This may be a problem. The question is, in my opinion, that we have not enough moral, ethical, and sociological concepts of what makes a better society with technology. And this is why I think it's very important for everyone to think not only to their own expertise, but also in terms of what does it do to humanity, what is the social value, what are the side effects. And this study of side effects, in my opinion, should become very, very general in terms of everything, because every day we are facing new things, and I believe that many of the procedures and the regulations are to some degree improvised because you don't know enough. In other words, no leader today can make a decision based on past experience. And whenever somebody takes a risk, a decision can be made. It means that in order to be a leader, you need to be a risk taker.
What do you feel about the point of view that I don't speak for everybody, but it seems like my parents' generation, they can add, subtract, divide quickly on paper, whereas I find a lot of my peers have been suckered into the technology. Where's the calculator? And it's dumbing us down, and technology is actually becoming a detriment. And
the same thing could be said for literacy, however, is that pre-literacy, people's memories and mnemonics were very well developed, and that simply has disappeared. Pre-literacy, the elders of society were the record keepers. They were the ones who went to, well, do you remember 30 winters ago who owned this land? They were it. There were no records. But once literacy came along, you could write it down, and then you didn't have to come up with tricks for memorize it or necessarily rely on the elders of society. But can you say that that's necessarily a detrimental?
And on the other hand, just because you're using a calculator to do addition and subtraction, it's like, what are you adding and subtracting? You're spending, if a child has to spend 2 years to memorize multiplication tables, where now, as long as they understand the concept, know how to multiply, then they can move on much more quickly to algebra, and then hopefully, it's not happened so far, but hopefully they'll get more.
It seemed to start after the cabbage patch
quickly because they have more tools to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, what does it matter if we can never?
Just a moment. I'll try to. I think that all your questions are very, very intelligent and deserve to be, if not answered, because it's difficult to answer, I must say, deserve to be analyzed. And I will react very candidly, saying that technology has been always opposed by smaller or larger groups. It's a history of the Luddites in Britain who have refused to join contemporary ways of life. The question becomes more and more urgent because there are casualties. There are more and more casualties, and I think that people are gradually becoming aware, first of all, of who is entitled to decide. Secondly, what sort of decision do you take? Therefore, my first position is that we need more debates around those questions, because I'm concerned that we accept too much too fast without questioning.
If I could elaborate on that, Professor Shapira. One of the things that we've discussed in the past, and it sort of points on a bit what Moshe was referring to earlier, when we hear of all of the way in which we've become so sophisticated marketing-wise. I mean, there's no question that as a dominant Western culture, the United States is the king of marketing. They are no longer, they market services, they market facilities. They are no longer an industrial power. They are not even, in some regards, a technological power as much as which they dominated in the past. So now they become a service industry for the most part. And by that, not only servicing in terms of McDonald's or Coca-Cola or the entertainment industry, but a service industry in regards to that if you want to make something look good, if you want to sell something, the United States is king of marketing. And the danger of that is that you find that with the globalization of the world, as it's been coined, in the whole term of talking about a global village, it's really a global dominance of a particular culture or a particular system, and that's be it the large industrialized economies, which is saying that it's not really a global village, it's really global feudalism. It's like global estates, whereas the rest of the world is basically subordinate to the IMF, the World Bank, and whatever the market values or whatever the way the industry sways. So I feel the danger is that when you look at the beauty of, say, culture of the past in terms of what exists in museums today, and we look at the future, can we say, for example, what will we have in the museums 100 years from now? I mean, what type of culture will prevail? I mean, what type of beauty? I mean, we look at the culture that we look back at today in our anthropological museums and museums of today. Really think about how we're advancing in our technology today in the homogeneous way in which a lot of the culture is dominating. What will we have to say in the next millennium? And we'll look back at our culture. What culture will prevail? What culture will dominate? And will that be the last culture? So I think we really need to look at the cultural values that exist in other cultures and see what is sustainable.
Do you want to answer or do you want to ask? If you want to answer.
I was just going to say, having traveled, when Moshe brought up the idea of this globalization, having traveled a little bit this summer to Italy, actually, I happen to think cultures' identities are stronger than you might think, and I think whereas the Western culture is sort of enveloping the globe, I have a little bit more faith in culture's abilities to take in some, and they will change, and that's, how that changes may or may not be for the good, because there's been some pretty serious detrimental change because of Western influences, in other indigenous cultures. But I have more faith in its ability to absorb it in their own way. An example, although it's sort of overused, is Japan, where it's just taken so much of Western culture, but they have a whole different way of dealing with it in a way. I happen to think there's still more strength there than not, because Italy was there were things and ways people did things in Italy that was so foreign to me. It was just like, whoa, where'd you come up with? You have a totally different value system. I mean, it's different.
If you want to answer, talk. If you want to ask, wait.
I was going to simply add, it seems to me that the material things, the clothes we wear, the things we sit on, the objects we use are becoming more homogenous. But what we carry inside of ourselves, our culture, our heritage, the way we look at the world, the way we do things, managerials, everything remains unique to each individual culture, whether or not it's expressed as in an external way. Buildings seem to be more cultural, but definitely, I think, when we look back at this particular part of the 20th century, we all sit on the same chairs. You go anywhere around the world, you see auditoriums basically look like this, but what the ideas, the thoughts, the way people express it is incredibly differently the same. And I think that's where the culture is being expressed on the written word.
Well, first thing I want to say is that you want to ask or answer?
Add to.
Okay, please.
I like the example that I was listening to an interview with David Byrne, and he was talking about how a lot of people have put down what they call cultural cannibalism in the music business, where it's based on his name, the rock and roller who went to South Africa.
Paul Simon.
And how there was this whole exchange happening, and it was watering down the South African music. Yet what it did was it opened up doors for their music in the United States. It was a good thing. It was a cross-cultural exchange of music. I don't think rock and roll and pop music are going to take over in Europe, Africa, Asia. However, we are going to exchange, and we're going to get back from the different cultures. I think in the technology and the design, you will see a cross-cultural exchange, and the whole world will benefit from the fact that we're going to look at Kenya and South Africa and Malaysia and the different cultures and the way the patterns and things are used to actually enhance the Western culture the same way we're influencing our culture.
I tend to agree with that because it seems to me that suddenly everybody has access to everybody, and therefore, as you say, it's a come and go process, which is not a one-way street. And I'm learning, for instance, about things I never heard before, like this singer from Cabo Verde, who was a hit in Los Angeles, and I hear that she was a hit in San Francisco, and she wouldn't have been here if there wouldn't be airplanes and radio and all new technology. So from this point of view, I think that the next 20 years will be the most exciting years if cultures will become more accessible. In Los Angeles, on Sunday, you can hear Armenian songs on television, you can hear Italian opera. Every month now, there is more evidence of other cultures arriving to us, hopefully in exchange for what we consider culture, and sometimes isn't, like the McDonald's and the pizza one, which is a result of marketing. But I'm also thinking to the anger of one of my French friends who said to me once, none of my kids enjoy anything which is French. I try to give them French food, French music, French dresses, and they are all Americans in their patterns of consumption, because you Americans have transformed culture in merchandise. And I'm thinking that perhaps if culture becomes a merchandise, we will witness a new free market where probably we will be more vulnerable than we were in the past, because there might be some cultures which may have something to offer which will appeal more to people than what we have to offer. I'll come to you in a moment. So I think that among the changes which take place, one of the major issue has to do with intellectual property. Intellectual property will become, in my opinion, the strength of cultures. And I think that we already have some examples of it. But Ricardo spoke about the global village, and I'm glad that those issues are raised in classes of design, because I think that the designers need to get involved more and more with these problems, in addition to form, beyond form, because they understand emotions and humanity from their own experience, and I think that we may consider ourselves the keepers of those values if we understand them. And there is a very encouraging fact happening, that the next International Design Congress, which will take place in Toronto in '67, has chosen as a theme not the global village, but the humane village.
In '97.
What?
97.
No, 97, I'm
67
sorry.
was Montreal.
Yeah, no, 97. But it will take place in Canada too, in Toronto. And the theme is the humane village, to react to the concept of globalism, which in their opinion was too ambitious and too unrealistic, and it was all a fallout of Marshall McLuhan. They would like to see what would be the humane village, because probably we will have invisible villages, because radio, television, telephones, email. Incidentally, today I talked with a friend who returned at UCLA after 2 weeks vacation and said, I'm getting crazy. There are 500 email messages, and I can't see them. I can see only one at a time.
Time saver, huh?
What?
It's a time saver, huh?
Yeah. No. Well, it's a time saver, but you know, when we had paper, we could resort them, rearrange them, and put them in the order of urgency.
So I wanted to ask you while you were
Yes.
here, do you think technology is progress?
Didn't you ask this before?
I thought I had. And then we started going going off into, like...
But in the answer, if I remember well, I said depends who controls it.
Okay.
I mean,
I thought it was going to be a more bald answer, I guess.
well,
As a user of technology, are you controlling the technology you use, or are you letting it control
Yeah,
you?
I've taken the ringers out of all my phones.
And then Moshe, and then I want Steve. You had a question. You'll have it.
incidentally, Professor Gomez, what are your?
Technically, we've got 10 to 15. Depends on if anybody has to use the bathroom.
Yeah, and how about the videos? But videos
No.
is like television, so whatever you want. I don't mind. I'm fascinated by, and I want to congratulate you all because I think that the level of your priorities is very encouraging.
When you say that there is a cross-fertilization between cultures, let's say that indigenous communities, we study the particulars and we import it into our culture. However, the process of import is done by tools of media that stream the culture. They just pick up the soundbite. So a person will go to a concert, will see a men choir with some percussions, and he'll say, oh, well, yeah, I heard this African music, I know all about it. Meanwhile, for the indigenous community, this is a precious expression of culture, of family structure, of a whole bunch of stuff. And the kid that sees it on MTV will never have a clue of its connotations.
Sure.
And they so that but nobody is going to tell him, well, look, this is a distorted view, or you don't really get the picture.
No, I fully agree with you, but I became aware of it in 1984 when we had the Olympics game in Los Angeles, and I was experiencing the city real, and I was experiencing the city on television. And all the decoration of the city looked to me like Italian linen laundry being dried, while on television they looked like impressive urban decoration. So I realized then exactly what you say, that it's a very important thing. But then I also hope that our education systems will create people who are really prepared to face the culture of our time. I spent this summer, not because I want to brag about being unusual, but I was curious to go to Montana to be at a powwow. And because I have seen some of them on television, I wanted to experience, I want to feel the smell, I want to see how the thing is in terms of dimensions, in terms of light, in terms of magic, in terms, and I was very impressed. But what impressed me more was to see the scale of the powwow. It's an enormous event, extremely well attended. How many in this room have ever attended a powwow? Well, you know what powwow is? Well, it's a ritual festival of dance of Native Americans, and they are very happy if you are there. You don't have to pay, because this is their expression of faith, which is their ritual, and if you want to watch it, you're welcome to watch it. They don't charge you entry, and the number of participants, the diversity of costumes, the enthusiasm has been for me an incredible discovery. I have seen Indian dances before in New Mexico and in Arizona, but what I saw in Montana has exceeded everything else in scale and in quality. Well, I came home and through my regular mail I'm getting an announcement that the first tribal powwow in Los Angeles takes place 3 weeks later. And I went there and I was impressed to see the scale. It means that there is an incredible development of awareness of diversity, of culture, of sorting out what is important, what's not important. So I personally am encouraged. I don't feel that we will all rock and roll and eat McDonald's hamburgers. As a matter of fact, they say that we have more French croissants in Los Angeles than they have hamburgers in Paris. Yeah.
But the biggest Burger King in the world is on Champs-Elysees.
That's
Sell
true.
more Burger Kings and sell more Whoppers in the Champs-Elysees they do anywhere in the world.
That's true too. But first of all, let me try to give you my personal thought related to you. Look, I feel very encouraged about your questions for the following reason. I believe that the future should be your first priority, because if you don't care about your future, you don't deserve one. And unfortunately, the future is not anymore my own priority, because I just want to make sure that I leave behind things in order, and that's a huge amount of work I have to do. But think about your future, and don't be scared of it. On the contrary, feel empowered that unless you care for it, you don't deserve it. That's what I think it's important.
Well, thank you. Okay. Well, I want to thank Professor Shapira for sharing some of that insight and some of the wisdom. I'm always amazed at I guess one of the things we can look forward to in sort of longevity in elderly is wisdom, and so we're glad you're able to share some of that wisdom with us, and we hope that we will gather some of that and create our own wisdom when we leave here and we move on in the various areas that we will go in. Again, I appreciate Moshe Krugman you coming in and giving some light, because again, as I mentioned earlier, Moshe was one of the people I'd like to have part of my seminar, so I'm glad that not only do I have Moshe, but I have some of the students here as well, so I do appreciate your comments as well. So that concludes our session. I just wanted to talk to my class, and then we can go. I just wanted a few things to note with what we have.
Don't do it.
Side effects.
Just makes one time.
I love you.
Right into the gut.
Two things. One, Alicia, I have something for you that may be interesting. Just about your case study or some other angle.
I mean, I enjoy
Who amongst us here is declining in their case study projects? Okay, I have actually I have someone I want you to meet.
Everything we mentioned has been around for the last 100 years.
Maybe you could go. You build with small attention. If not, we can reschedule the Friday. Anybody else?
I think this is
But technologically, we think we know what we're doing now, and it's only...
The same way as your question of how did you make me out of question,
Do you have a topic or
It blows my mind that no people can take a picture using a computer without a hard drive. It's only been around since like, what, 85, 86? And we depend on it. We can't think beyond it. It's like, wait a minute.
I told you, I got what's happened. On my birthday to buy from you about 2 years ago, and I saw it and spent the money because now I'm buying Windows 95.
All getting gray.
But it's because most people don't question technology.
Don't question, no question.
No, but I'm saying most people don't.
Yeah, because their mind is tired and they're waiting for answers.
I mean, I work in preschool. I turn to one of my kids and I go type the letter.
Who else coming here? I know.
Email. Oh, okay. You know.
No question.
We're talking 3-year-olds.
Yeah, but the kids are much better than parents. They know.
Oh, I know, but you know, it's all subjective.
On Nintendo, you know, I still don't know how to
It's
type it.
so instructive. Besides just the way it's introduced.
Right, architecture. We're going to talk about, we're going to narrow it down, right? We're going to try to,
As something
okay.
that's
And I direct those to Craig. I know yours
Because the way marketing is.
I guess is that a
People don't
courtroom?
accept it.
Is
Oh,
that
cellular
I
telephone.
don't understand
do
why
you
we
feel
make it
comfortable with
such
that?
a.
I'd like to, essentially what I'd like to do, I'd like to encourage, men, yours is okay. Excuse me,
But look,
Michelle,
I'm sorry.
is your topic fairly well
Saying you
settled?
have
Are you settled?
so pacified my worries, so you were absolutely wonderful.
I enjoyed it tremendously.
I need from you.
People, how many people have done your
contact
outlines?
I can learn. Pardon? I'm crazy.
Well, you gave me
Oh,
yours.
please. This is
This is fine.
Well,
your opinion is
we ought to spend some more time together. Yeah. At this point,
How do you think
the
about the sequence? Because I present the sequence for the first time.
the loafers were bad move. Should have done lace-ups. There's some criticism for you.
What?
Thanks for coming.
How are you? Are you still?
The sequence, you know, I
Are you still in the bathroom?
well, there is,
Well, no, I have to do this.
in general,
That may be interesting.
our problem is that we compete with professional media people, and somebody writes for them, and they look at the camera, and there is a board, and they read, and the punchlines are always there and all that. So the challenge, the flow, and all that, you know, that's one criteria that we can only, climb on the mountain but never get on the top.
Then I
Okay,
want
so
to make sure that, again, I have
one thing.
Thursdays, I'm available.
I think that
go and produce programs.
Up until I get a
Stop feeling
So
like
it's only 10.
go to cinema instead
I
of
can even
being
meet a bit
theater.
earlier if needed. Right. Everybody's.
well, I thought that
Someone wants to talk
if
to
it
me
is
on
used
Thursday,
properly,
we
it's
sit
a
down and
tremendous
kinda go over the
educational
outline.
tool
I
to
can go
actually
back
run
and
lectures and then sit back and edit it and make.
Yeah, you see, for instance, I hate to undo this
Also, we can talk on the phone.
carousels because I don't know what the sequence is, so perhaps I'll save it and make some photo stats.
So I'd like to kind of get that out the way.
But
so at least you
I need to know if
Again, the
it
outline
makes
is really
sense
just meant to
because
structure your thought. It's not meant to be
I
too
think
little
that
information, too much comment, too much
you may not use as a category on that level.
I think that
Again, I want to look at the
it has the main thesis, the main topics came through. Came through definitely.
This is what
Well,
but get comments from students. I want this Ricardo does this feedback from students.
yeah, I'll see.
It has more courage to talk when you don't know.
Okay, so just a second. So you'll take this with you as it is, and eventually Ricardo will bring those back to me.
Yeah, but I enjoyed it with comments.
Okay, so whenever you're here, mention to Ricardo to summon me, and we'll have lunch together or
I'd like you
something.
to come
and
to Los Angeles. When do we do that?
when do we do that? Yeah, this is difficult. I have children.
How many? God bless them.
God bless them. I have as many as you. I have 3 of my own.
Yeah, and how many of hers?
3.
6. Wonderful. All you need is wisdom.
All I need is a bus.
Anyway, that's going to be a very nice day of activities as well.
You see?
You seen the new Chrysler van?
No, the Suburban.
Well, it's wholesale. It's cheap.
Anybody have those? I pass.
Yeah, no, but it's great.
Anybody have those handouts on? Any-
So it's my departures are
Maybe I
very sort of
have one around there.
walking on a road.
No, but we send them all
I
to
can make a
Sila.
copy. I have
Well,
I made more than enough.
I'm sorry.
Anybody have any general questions that they'd like to ask?
but so in other words, you are not a frequent visitor to.
I don't charge money, but I
Also,
don't have money for expenses. So if
I'll
somebody
confirm
calls
our
my
last
expenses,
meeting on the
I can get
31st, because in the event that we were supposed to have scheduled karaoke
Yeah.
on the 31st.
No,
I'd like to use that time.
But I'd like to.
we will
Yeah, we
talk
will.
more.
Yeah.
So when are you leaving?
Had reading assignments.
Spiritually never, physically in 2 days.
In 2 days.
This one break
Come,
will
do
be-
you have to go to
Thursday.
the children tonight?
On Thursday.
You want to have some prosciutto on the
All right, so
How about
I'll
on
walk
Thursday
over that way for
for
those
like
wrap up this stuff. I
like
can
midday?
Someone wanted to open the door to get your things there. I just want to
in Auckland, and I was advised to take the boat from Ambassador.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, that's lovely.
No, it's not a piece of paper. It does not have to be conclusive. Should be
So
leave
how about
I just don't want to leave it open-ended where you just kind of grab the information, you don't know what to use it. I'd like to make it
from Auckland back here?
Who has this
That's a good
up
idea.
I got
That's a possibility. So you will leave at noon.
Or what we can do is have Ricardo not to come.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm going to bring my luggage because I fly back from my
Oh, so you stay overnight in night?
No, I don't stay overnight. I have my flight at
Okay, well, I'll have your
7:30 from
I'll
Auckland.
I'm just
Oh,
in the
okay.
lab.
All right,
I'm
okay,
gonna be
no
after
problem.
the lab.
Okay.
Or you can come by and wave to me in the lab.
Okay.
Well,
I
we can talk in
I-
the morning. Let's talk in the morning. Call me at Chicago.
I'll call you. Okay.
I propose a different
Okay.
paradigm.
Excellent. Thank you.
Always open.
Instead of, or in addition to, inner sanctuary, there will be an exterior sanctuary needed because people will be spending so much time in front of their computer, talking on email, looking at the TV, getting all the reports, telecommuting.
Is the museum in that place?
I believe it was an external museum now. How do you get back to
Should it be the
nature?
museum? Should it be the park? Should they redefine the park to be a
Center for Contemporary Culture.
You said the park becomes safer park. Remember that? Oh, you were talked about the park.
But the idea that not only because Rob works with
Thank you.
World Wide Web page,
Thank you very much.
and he spent
Bye.
he kind of said
Okay.